Our first bill today, Senate Bill 28. So we'll be working on our Senate bills that have come over. I think we only have one more that we're planning on hearing on Wednesday at this moment. So with Senate Bill 28, I turn it over to our reviser for an overview of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee. Senate Bill 28, as amended by Senate Committee, updates the National Association of Insurance Commissioners Credit for Reinsurance Model Law. It updates the Insurance Holding Company Act, and it codifies the Credit for Reinsurance Model Regulation. It creates one new section of law and amends KSA 2020 40-221A, 40-3302, 40-3304, and 40-3306. And this bill is essentially the same as House Bill 2134. The only difference between the two is that there's a technical amendment that was added by the Senate Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance, and I'll speak about that at the end. So to review the provisions of the bill, Section 1 would create all new law by codifying the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, the NAIC Credit for Reinsurance Model Regulation into statute. Section 2 amends KSA 2020 sub 40-221A, which is our state's credit for reinsurance statute. And under current law, a domestic ceding insurer is permitted a credit for reinsurance as an asset or reduction from liability when it's ceded to an assuming insurer if the ceding insurer satisfies one of 6 different conditions that each have different requirements that must be met in order for the ceding insurer to receive the credit. Senate Bill 28 would add an additional condition under which such a credit may be permitted, and the requirements of this new condition are listed on page 42 of the bill. Section 3 amends KSA 2020 sub 40-3302, which is the definition statute of the Insurance Holding Company Act. The bill adds 2 new definitions to the statute. First, the definition of group-wide supervisor has been added. And second, the definition of internationally active insurance group has been added to the statute. Section 4, where did my section 4 go? Let me go to section 5. Section 5 amends KSA 2020 sub 40-3304 of the Insurance Holding Company Act. And it requires that any controlling person of a domestic insurer seeking to divest its controlling interest in the domestic insurer must file a confidential notice of its proposed divestiture with the commissioner and copy the insurer at least 30 days prior to the cessation of control. The bill would also require that the commissioner determine those circumstances under which each party seeking to divest or acquire a controlling interest in an insurer would be required to file for and obtain approval of the transaction. The bill would also require the acquiring person to file a pre-acquisition notice with the commissioner containing information in the form and manner prescribed by the commissioner in rules and regulations. And these requirements are not a part of current law and would be new requirements added to the statute. And finally, the Committee on Financial Institutions and Insurance in the Senate did make a technical amendment to the bill. That amendment occurs on page 15 of the bill in line 23, where the reviser, that's me, failed to make an update to the sunset date pertaining to the confidentiality of certain information provided to the commissioner during the application for certification as a reinsurer. Just to give you the background information on that, this was a holdover from the department's legislative agenda last year. And when we reintroduced it with the additions for this year, I caught the change on the Senate bill. Caught the changes on the House bill, but failed to catch the change on the Senate bill. So we had to go in and make that one technical amendment. And that's the only difference between the 2 bills. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
Thank you, Reviser. On that, you said the only difference was the technical amendment, but after the amendment, then the bills are virtually the same?
That's correct. Everything else is identical.
Thank you. Questions for the reviser? Seeing none, thank you for that overview. So, and on the House Bill 2134, I would, again, I think our carrier did a great job of explaining that bill as briefly and clearly as it could be. So, Representative Proctor, thanks for your work on that one.
Oh, and
Then
Mr.
from there,
Chair,
yes.
I'm sorry, one last thing. The bill did pass the Senate 39-0.
Okay. Thank you
That's the
for
only
that
thing I wanted
addition.
to add.
I appreciate that. So thank you for joining in. From there, on the fiscal note, it is really not relevant, so it's essentially zero. So we will skip that and move straight to our proponent testimony. Mr. Modisett, welcome back to committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Lee Modisett, Government Affairs for the Insurance Department. Eileen did a great job summarizing. The only note addition I wanted to add is with the House version, not only was it worked out of this committee, but it also passed the House 123-0. I don't see a need to regurgitate everything that's already been mentioned, so I would be happy in the interest of time to go right to questions if there are any.
Thank you. Committee, are there any questions for the proponent? Everybody feel, yep, Representative Dodson.
Just have one quick question. When it's talking about this model regulation that's now being codified here in Kansas, is it true to say that this has been adopted by several of the states by this time?
Yes, Representative, I have to get you the exact count, but I believe it's 30-some states have already adopted this, and the remainder will have adopted them by the end of 2022.
Thank you. Any further questions? This is our one crack at questions, so if you remember it well from the last time, we're in good shape. But seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So I have no other listed conferees. Is there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent? Anyone opponent, neutral, and anyone else at all on Senate Bill 28? Not, we will close the hearing. Thanks to the committee and to staff for getting everything in front of us. We will shift gears, and if we wave our capers conferees in from the hall, who we had banished in the sake of room earlier, we will move into that particular topic. But I think they're familiar with the bill, so I'll have the reviser begin with an overview.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senate Bill 86 was a bill requested for introduction by the Capers Board of Trustees during a Joint Committee on Pensions, Investments, and Benefits meeting back in December. The bill will amend KSA 7449-123. This is kind of known as the IRS guidepost section of the Capers Act that concerns the applicability of certain federal Internal Revenue Code provisions to the retirement system. Specifically, the bill amends subsection C3 Cap A, requiring a member to receive benefits at the later April 1 of the calendar year following the calendar year in which the member reaches age 72 or 71 half if the member is born before July 1, 1949, or April 1 of the calendar year following the calendar year in which the member terminates employment. The purpose of this amendment is to conform the subsection with amendments made to the Federal Internal Revenue Code, Section 4019A, that was made by the Federal CARES Act. There's also amendments in the Secure Act, another federal law back in December of 2019. So this is really just aligning our state Capers law with the new federal legislation. Under current law, the required distribution would occur at the later of the April 1 following the calendar year to the member reaches age 71 half, or April 1 after they following the calendar year in which the member terminates employment. So instead of 71 and a half, this does push it up to potentially 72, except in those cases where people are born before July 1st, 1949. The bill becomes effective upon publication in the statute book, and the Senate made no amendments to the bill and passed it 39-0 on March 2nd, 2021. And I can stand for any questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Committee questions? I would have one. looking at the age change, and I'm guessing this is just to be consistent with the federal code, but I'm thinking those people born before July 1 of 49 will be 72 by the time this would take effect in the statute book. So do we need that to be consistent with federal? Otherwise, it would seem like everyone would be at that age anyway. Or maybe I'm not reading it quite right.
Yeah, I think probably everybody probably would be at that age already. I think it's more for the people that are after that date is when they pushed it out in the federal law. And this is just, so people that are already at that age probably already had to take the distribution. And then, but then there's some people that are after that July 49 date, can push it out to 72. But I think that's just what the federal law was. And of course, this was passed back last year by Congress, so that might have played a role into some of that too. But
So thank you. Do you know if that is consistent with the federal language in terms of how the dates were set, or is that specific to us?
that was consistent with the federal law.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you for the overview. Again, the fiscal note is non-existent for this one, so I'll skip over that particular item as well and jump into our proponent testimony. And welcome back, Director Conroy, and thanks for working with us on space issues a minute ago.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe that's the first committee hearing I've ever been thrown out of, but that's okay. I think first for everything. So, thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee members. This bill, Senate Bill 86, and I hate to use these words, but it truly is a technical bill. This is a technical change, as David certainly explained very well, keeps us in compliance with federal legislation, which means IRS regulations. And this applies only, there's a KPERS 457 plan, which is the Deferred Compensation Plan. It's all employee money, so it's not the big KPERS trust fund where employee and employer contributions go in. This is the Deferred Compensation Program where employees make voluntary contributions to it to help as part of their retirement planning. And so it's a separate trust fund. There's about $1.4 billion in that fund right now. Out of the 1,500 KPERS participating employers, about 386 are affiliated with this KPERS 457. A lot of them have their own, particularly school districts might have their own 403B or some other thing, which is great. Again, it is the three-legged stool for retirement: KPERS, Social Security, and then personal savings. The KPERS 457 plan, the deferred comp plan, is a vehicle to do that third leg. And as David indicated, this has to do with changing that age at the required minimum distribution dates from 70 and a half to 72. And so this was, one was that Federal Secure Act that was passed, and then the second one, the Federal CARES Act. This just aligns in the KPERS statutes with the federal statutes and the IRS regulations. There's requirements to keep our tax compliance with the IRS code, so we have the tax advantages that the Kansas statutes stay in sync with those IRS regulations, and this was one of them. There's actually two changes, both around that minimum distribution. One, our outside IRS tax compliance counsel, a firm named Ice Miller, had recommended one, there's a deadline that had to be changed by 2024. The other one is 2021. The thinking was, if you're going to make these technical changes on the same issue, it probably makes sense to do them both at this time rather than to come back in a couple years and make the same request. But it's just required minimum distribution. The deferred comp program, so not the regular KPERS program, keeps us square with the IRS. And I think my dad always told me that it was good to keep square with the IRS. So that'd be my suggestion.
So thank you. And if there's anything further, otherwise we will open for questions. Have any questions? So I might just reiterate, it's only for those defined contributions plan, of which the 457, is that the only plan that Capers has that would fall under this then?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any further questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
And if I may indulge, just one other subject. Again, particularly for new members, if you're always looking to learn more about Capers, the Capers Board of Trustees meets roughly every other month. And this Thursday, they have committee meetings, which should be the investment committee would meet Thursday afternoon. The Board of Trustees meets at 10:30 on Friday. Certainly, of course, you're welcome to come over, or if you'd want the Zoom connection, we'd certainly be glad to share that with you if you have interest in learn even more about Capers, if you're so inclined.
So thank you. And there are a few, you keep pretty close to your agenda and often run a minute or two ahead. The committees discuss a variety of topics, including investments on Thursday, right?
Yes.
And then your Friday time goes through a report from, does the investment consultant report on Friday?
He does.
And you have your legislative piece that's on that. Do you have an update of the portfolio performance from the investment team?
Yes, that's be early on in that meeting, part of that investment update from the consultant and from the staff. It's sort of an abbreviated one compared to the investment committee meeting that would take place then Thursday afternoon.
And
It's at 2 o'clock is the investment committee one. The board starts at 10:30 on Friday. Again,
if somebody wants the agenda, maybe send you an email.
yeah, I'd be glad to,
Or if you want us to distribute it to the
yeah,
whole committee.
if that worked, yeah, I'd be glad to.
And then you could see if there's some topics that you really wanted to tune in for. I've found that a great way to get to know more about Capers and what's actually happening. So thank you for that. Representative Riley, did you have any other questions? Okay. So great. So thank you for making us aware of that chance to get even more up to speed. So I don't believe we had any other questions. I do not have any other listed conferees. So is there anyone else wishing to appear as a proponent? Anyone as an opponent, neutral, or anyone else at all on Senate Bill 86? Not. We will close the hearing. I think we just found our lightest day so far. Wednesday, we have one bill. I'll look at that and see if it is similar. If so, I do think I'll probably be looking very carefully at these bills and seeing if there are any changes we might need to make as we send them back over to the Senate. But other than that, I look forward to working through the work as quickly as possible. So anything else for the good of the committee? Not. Thank you for your work, and we are adjourned.